And welcome back to the Deep Dive. So glad you could join us.
Yeah, great to be diving into another topic.
Today, we're taking a close look at a really interesting corner of the metaverse, one that's been evolving pretty fast, Decentraland.
It's a fascinating one. Really shows how these virtual worlds are mixing with, blockchain tech and virtual economies.
Absolutely. And to really get our heads around it, we've pulled together a bunch of sources. We've got articles, the foundational white papers, even some community discussion stuff. So our mission here is basically to unpack all this, give you a clear picture of what Decentraland actually is, how it works, the tech underneath it all, and, what makes it different, especially this whole idea of digital ownership, virtual property.
Yeah, we'll sort of journey through the tech layers, look at the tokens, the economy, what owning virtual land actually means.
The community governing it.
And even peek at where they're planning to go next, their roadmap.
Okay, great. Let's jump right in. So based on these sources, at its most basic level, what exactly is Decentraland?
Well, the sources describe it as an Ethereum-based open-world metaverse. You could maybe think of it like a game. But fundamentally, it's designed as this shared virtual world. And the key thing is it's operated by its users globally, not some central company.
Right, a shared space run by users. So what are people actually doing in there? What's the main activity?
You can explore, you can interact with other people, play games that other users have built, and maybe most famously, you can buy and sell digital real estate, virtual land.
The virtual land aspect.
Yeah. It's aiming for this immersive feeling, kind of like you're stepping into a game world, not just looking at a screen. But you're there in 3D with other actual people.
That shared presence thing feels important. And the sources mentioned ways people interact besides just wandering around, right?
Oh, yeah. They point to things like using interactive apps that people build in the world, making payments for stuff using the platform's own currency.
And world payments, okay.
And just communicating directly peer-to-peer. And a big concept they push is this creative digital ownership. Like you can build a virtual museum and actually show off your NFTs, your digital art.
Okay, that brings the blockchain side right in.
Yeah.
Who actually started this whole thing?
It was created by Ari Marlich and Esteban Ordano. The sources describe them as blockchain professionals. It officially launched back in 2020.
2020, okay.
And a really critical point that comes up again and again in the sources is that it's governed by a DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization.
Right, the DAO. Definitely need to circle back to that. It sounds core. But first, let's get the foundations down. The sources talk about a layered tech architecture. How does that work?
Yeah, it's not just one big system. They used a layered approach built on Ethereum smart contracts to handle different jobs.
Okay, so what's layer one, the base?
That's the consensus layer. Think of it as the bedrock, like you said. Its main job is just tracking who owns which piece of land. It uses a blockchain ledger for that.
A ledger for land ownership.
Exactly. Each land parcel gets defined by its coordinates, its X and Y position in the world. Who owns it? And this is key, a link to a file that describes what content is on that parcel.
So the description of what's built there.
Right. And this layer is what really establishes that private ownership and makes the land scarce. It's written onto the blockchain.
Okay, so ownership is on the blockchain. Yeah. What about all the stuff we actually see? The buildings, avatars, art?
That's handled by the next layer up, the content distribution layer. This one manages all the assets you interact with, the 3D models, animations, the clothes your avatar wears, textures.
The visual.
The whole kit and caboodle, yeah. But what's really interesting, and the sources make a point of this, is it uses a decentralized storage system, something like BitTorrent or IPFS.
Okay, why decentralized storage? Why not just put it on a big server somewhere? What's the advantage?
The sources really emphasize censorship resistance because the content is spread across a network of users, not just sitting on one company's server. It's much harder for anyone, even the original creators, to just shut the world down or change things without consensus. The idea is the world keeps existing as long as people are sharing the content.
That feels like a pretty major difference from most online platforms. Architecturally significant.
Yeah.
And what about seeing in other people, the live interaction, voice chat?
That's the job of the real-time layer. This layer supports all the live social stuff between avatars where they are, voice chat, messages. It runs on a peer-to-peer network, often using something like WebRTC.
Peer-to-peer for the live stuff.
Yeah, so users who are near each other in the virtual space can connect directly to see and interact in real time.
So, okay, you've got blockchain for ownership, decentralized storage for the content itself, and peer-to-peer networks for the live social layer. Clearly leveraging a lot of decentralized tech. And if I actually own land and want to build something, are there tools?
Yep. Sources highlight creator tools. There's a drag and drop thing called the Builder, meant to be more accessible.
Easier entry point.
Right. And then there's a command line interface, the DCL-CLI, for coders who want to build more complex applications or dynamic scenes.
Giving users tools to build seems essential to making the world interesting, which leads us nicely into the economy. What tokens make this whole thing run?
So Decentraland's economy basically runs on three main tokens: mana, land, and estate.
Okay, we hear about mana a lot. That's the money, right?
Exactly. Mana is the official currency. It's an ERC20 token, which means it's fungible, like one mana is the same as any other mana. And you use it for pretty much all in-world purchases, digital goods, services, whatever.
And land and estate, those are the property tokens. Are they fungible too?
No, they're not. Land and estate are ERC 721 tokens, NFTs. Non-fungible. So each one is unique, distinct.
Ah, like collector's items.
Kind of, yeah. Land represents one specific 16 by 16 meter plot. And an estate token is basically when you merge several adjacent land parcels together into one bigger holding. Because they're unique, these are used for things like avatars, special wearables, and of course the land parcels themselves.
Okay, so mana is the cash, land estate are the unique assets.
Yeah.
How do they work together? Like, how do you actually buy land?
Well, primarily you buy individual land parcels using mana, and this usually happens on Decentraland's own marketplace.
The official marketplace.
Right. And a key thing the sources point out is every transaction, buying land included, gets recorded on the Ethereum blockchain, so there's a public, verifiable record of who owns what.
The blockchain providing that proof. So the marketplace is key. What else happens there?
It's basically the hub for managing and trading land and estate. You can list your property, browse what's for sale, make offers, but it's also where you buy and sell wearables for your avatar. You know, digital clothes, shoes, accessories, and even unique avatar names.
Avatar names, too. Interesting. And I remember reading something in the sources about how creators get paid. That seemed different.
It really is. That definitely stood out. The sources highlight that creators selling stuff in the Decentraland marketplace keep, get this, 97.5% of the revenue.
Wow, 97.5%.
Yeah. The other 2.5% goes to the DAO treasury, and they specifically contrast that with more traditional platforms where creators often get a much, much smaller cut. It really shows an emphasis on empowering the people building within the world.
That revenue share is pretty compelling.
Yeah.
Makes sense if you want people to build cool stuff. Okay, let's dive deeper into owning that virtual real estate, the land.
Yeah.
Once you buy a piece, what can you actually do with it?
Well, owning a land parcel gives you total control over that 16 by 16 meter digital square. The sources confirm you can build pretty much whatever you want on it. Games, shops, art galleries, dynamic 3D scenes, little communities.
Your own little slice of the metaverse.
Exactly. It's your digital canvas to develop.
So you're buying development rights, essentially. And the map itself, it has different zones, right? It's not just random.
Correct. The whole map is made of these land parcels, but clusters of them, often with a shared theme or interest, grouped together to form districts.
Districts, okay.
Yeah, the sources mentioned examples like Vegas City or Fashion Street or District X. These areas tend to attract certain kinds of development and visitors.
And is there, like, unlimited land? Or is it scarce?
No, it's intentionally limited. The sources are clear. There's a cap on the number of land plots in the main area. Genesis City, 90,000 parcels.
Only 90,000.
Right. And that scarcity is positioned as a key driver of value and why location matters. Also, if new parcels are ever added, they have to be connected, contiguous to existing ones. So the world expands outwards organically. That whole location thing. It applies here too, believe it or not.
Even in the metaverse. Okay, so say someone listening is thinking, maybe I want to buy a piece. What's the process? How do you actually do it, according to the sources?
It's laid out pretty clearly. First step is you head to Decentraland's marketplace. Or potentially another compatible one, like OpenSea.
Right, there are other options.
Yeah. You browse what's listed under parcels and estates, find one you like, click it, check the details, price, and know who owns it. Is it actually for sale?
And then payment. How does that work?
You need a crypto wallet, something like MetaMask or Trust Wallet. You connect that wallet to the marketplace.
Connect your wallet. Got it.
Then you need to make sure you've got enough MEN-A in that wallet to cover the price. And crucially, the sources remind us, you also need some extra ETH, to pay for the Ethereum network's transaction fees, the gas costs.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
Gas fees. Can't escape them, even buying virtual dirt.
Exactly. So wallet connected, funds ready. You hit confirm on the purchase. The land, which is that unique NFT, gets transferred directly into your crypto wallet. Transaction gets recorded on the blockchain. Boom, you own it, verifiably.
Okay. And we saw some common questions pop up in the community discussions we looked at. Let's tackle a few. First off, marketplaces. Is Decentraland's own better than, say, OpenSea, or does it matter?
The general feeling from the community source was not really in terms of price. Prices tend to be similar, but sometimes one might have a technical glitch, so you might use the other. They also mentioned sometimes finding deals directly through, like, Discord groups.
Interesting. Okay. What about bidding versus just buying outright? Is one way better?
Yeah, that's like auctions versus fixed price in the real world, right? The community takes seem to be there's no single better way. It really depends on the market at that moment and what you prefer. Bidding could save you mayonnaise, but you might lose out. Buying outright gives you certainty, but maybe costs more if things are hot.
Makes sense. And a really basic one.
Yeah.
Where does the land actually live once you buy it? Does the marketplace hold it?
No, definitely not. The sources are super clear on this. The land NFT lives in your crypto wallet. It's an ERC 721 token you control. The marketplace is just an interface, really. It reads your wallet and helps make the transfer happen. It's genuinely in your possession.
Right, that really hammers home the ownership part. Okay, location, big decision. Any advice from the sources or community on picking a good spot?
The community sources had some practical thoughts. Being near Genesis Plaza, the main entry point, is often seen as good for visibility, maybe getting more random visitors.
High traffic area.
Kind of, yeah. Or being near other popular attractions or on a main road. But there's an interesting counterpoint, since you can just teleport anywhere.
Ah, teleportation.
Exactly. Does physical closeness matter as much for discovery as it would in a real city?
It's something people debate, something to consider.
Definitely changes the calculus. Okay, last buyer question. Investing. Is it smarter to just buy mana, the currency, or invest in land itself? I think the sources even had some numbers on this.
Yeah, common question. The sources generally frame owning mana as, less risky, more liquid, easier to sell quickly if you need to.
Right.
Owning land ties your money not just to mana's price, but also to that specific parcel, its location, desirability, overall scarcity. Now, the community discussion did mention an example from the past where land saw like way higher returns, something like 75x compared to just holding mana, which was maybe 12x in that same period.
Whoa, 75x versus 12x?
Yeah.
It's huge. It is huge. But, and this is a big but, the sources are careful to add the standard disclaimer. Past performance doesn't guarantee future results. Plus, land is less liquid. Selling one specific parcel might take time, might require dropping the price. Selling a non is usually instant on an exchange.
So higher potential reward with land, but more risk, less liquidity.
Exactly. Classic risk-reward trade-off. Depends on what you're comfortable with, really.
That historical example is definitely food for thought, though. Okay, let's shift gears a bit. You mentioned it early on, and it sounds crucial to Decentraland's whole identity, governance, and the community. The DAO.
Yeah, the Decentraland DAO, it's presented as a really key differentiator. It's the system for community governance. Basically, if you hold Decentraland assets, NA, land, or even those unique names we mentioned, you get voting power, VP.
Voting power.
And you use that VP to propose things and vote on major decisions about the platform's future. Policies, how things are managed, even what new wearables get approved, things like that.
So the actual users, the stakeholders, have a direct say.
That's the goal, to move the power away from one central company and give it to the community. The sources also mention the Decentraland Foundation. That's a nonprofit that works alongside the DAO.
What do they do?
Their focus is more on the core development, keeping things secure, helping the ecosystem grow, managing the brand. They got a big chunk of NNA initially to fund that work.
Okay, so there's this structure for decentralized governing, and it seems deeply tied to the community itself. We saw some really powerful testimonials in the sources about how being part of Decentraland actually impacted people's real lives. What stood out there?
Yeah, those user stories were quite something. They highlighted a few key impacts. One big theme was overcoming social anxiety or isolation, people finding a real sense of connection, belonging within that community. Some said they felt more genuinely connected interacting in that 3D space than, say, just texting on social media.
That immersive social aspect making a difference. What about self-expression?
Huge point. Users talked about feeling true digital ownership, not just of assets, but of their identity, being free from physical limitations. There was one really moving example about how it helped someone navigate gender dysphoria, giving them a safe space to be themselves.
That's incredibly meaningful. And creativity. The sources mention that too.
Absolutely. Big draw. People love the accessible tools, like the builder, making it easier to create things, even wearables. They felt this freedom to build without asking permission, which they contrasted with, real-world limitations.
And did that translate into a sense of, like, collective purpose?
It seemed to, yeah. Being part of the DAO, contributing to development, it gave users a feeling of purpose, like they weren't just consuming content, they were actually shaping this world. Some even hoped they could build a better kind of society there, create new opportunities.
What about cultural stuff? Did the sources touch on that?
They did. People talked about how Decentraland makes things like concerts or festivals more accessible. One person compared going to a virtual concert really favorably to a physical one easier, still felt connected to the crowd.
Interesting. And economic opportunities.
Yeah, that was another big real-world impact. People finding actual jobs or starting businesses within Decentraland, maybe getting DAO grants, maybe creating content, offering services. One person felt it unlocked potential they didn't know they had, like leading teams, building things in ways that might have been harder offline.
Wow. It's clear from all that Decentraland isn't just tech. It's fostered this community with real, meaningful effects. Okay, looking forward now. The sources laid out a pretty ambitious roadmap. What are the main things they're planning?
Yeah, they're looking at major upgrades across the board. One big area is just making the in-world experience better, more social features, better avatars like facial expressions, VR support.
VR support, okay.
Making it easier to find cool stuff, maybe tweaking teleportation a bit to encourage exploring on foot, and just more immersion, dynamic environments like weather.
Weather in the metaverse. That's kind of cool. Anything else for immersion?
They mentioned adding new ways to move around, like climbing or swimming, introducing pets, vehicles, and finding ways to encourage people to actually build on empty land, make the world feel richer.
And for the creators?
Yeah.
The builders?
Big focus on advancing creator tools, making it even easier to build, maybe with AI help, real-time visual editors, building right inside the world, and adding more power, like better lighting, physics.
Making it easier to create seems vital. What about the marketplace, the economy side?
Yep, marketplace improvements are planned, looking at supporting multiple blockchains, which is interesting, and importantly, finding ways to do transactions off-chain to lower those gas fees we talked about.
Cheaper transactions would be nice.
Definitely. Plus adding more standard shop features like sales, bundles, and a special marketplace for smart items that are easy to integrate.
And lastly, just getting more people in.
Exactly. Expanding accessibility, bringing Decentraland to more platforms, VR, mobile, game consoles, and trying to get more visibility through app stores, streaming, maybe even adapting things for younger users eventually.
That is quite a list. Shows they've got a clear vision for pushing things forward.
Yeah, it shows they're committed to improving the experience, empowering the users, growing the audience, all while trying to stick to that decentralized core.
So, pulling it all together from this deep dive, Decentraland really comes across as this pioneer, a user-owned, decentralized virtual world, clearly driven by its community, built on blockchain, especially the tokens and the DAO.
Yeah, it's definitely more than just a game. It feels like an ecosystem that's constantly evolving. And it's all centered around this idea of real digital ownership, creativity, and surprisingly perhaps, genuine human connection, where the users are meant to be in charge.
And thinking about how much time we're all spending in digital spaces now and all the concerns about big platforms controlling our data, our online lives, it makes you wonder, what is a model like Decentraland's decentralized, user-owned, what might that signal for the future of the internet itself? What could it mean for that balance of power between us, the users, and the platforms we use every day? Yeah. Definitely a provocative thought that comes out of looking at these sources.
It really raises fundamental questions, doesn't it, about who owns these digital spaces we inhabit? Autonomy online.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Decentraland, exploring what these sources had to say about this really unique corner of the metaverse. We hope you found it insightful.
It was definitely an illuminating look at the material. Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.